Hey, welcome to it. It's the Sunday live edition of the Average Joe Sports Show. That's Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. It's a bye weekend, but a blissful weekend of college football. Episode 61, and we come to you Sunday mornings at 10:30. That's kind of our plan, and we drop in a midweek show as well as we get ready for Nebraska, Indiana. And like and subscribe to the Average Joe Sports Show. Do so on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Also Spotify and iTunes. Bill, it was a glorious weekend of college football. Sharpie, you are trying to bundle up. You're a little chilled this morning, dude.
It's cold. Are you guys not cold?
I haven't been outdoors yet, but I am golfing here in an hour and a half, so I am going to have to parka up, I think.
It's like in the 50s in Omaha. I'm waiting for it, and it's supposed to freeze tomorrow. You're either going to get a Hugh or a Scott, whatever you choose.
See, I have something in my house, though, that it's called a heater, and it actually warms my house up so that the temperature outside doesn't affect me as much inside. It's a great little piece of technology.
Can you send me the link when we're done?
Yeah, I can do that.
Schmidt looks like he's going to Bushwood with Judge Smales.
Wow.
And Sharpie looks like he's going to Nebraska later.
Hey, but what a sport. What a friggin' incredible sport. We were blessed by the scheduling gods that we didn't have to have a worry Saturday. We could sit back and watch football from the early window to the late window. I mean, guys, we had a game where a tight end snapped the ball, and at the end of that same play, he caught the ball for a touchdown. How great is this sport?
That sounds like six-man football, where everybody's open all the time.
Yeah. Carter Nelson, welcome to your new role within the offense.
Hey, can you design up something you ran at Ainsworth for us? I saw something in the USC Penn State game.
Will it work? No, it was awesome. Penn State got a wow road win. Oregon hit all the right buttons with some of their play calling and decisions when to run. Gabriel, that was an incredible zone read call on 4th and short, where he takes it to the house for 30 yards. And Nebraska fans remember him zooming by on the sideline for a 60-yard scramble touchdown. Yeah, had the Buffs battle back, being down their top 4 receivers, only to have Avery break their hearts with a 50-yard touchdown pass. Ole Miss and LSU was a classic where you had LSU go up by a field goal, and then all it took was one play, and the Southern gentleman was dancing on the sideline for LSU to get that win in overtime. What do we think? Oh, yeah, by the way, Wisconsin is woken up.
Yeah, that was your most complete game. But you're missing out. You're missing out on another one.
Which one?
I mean, are we not going to talk about the fact that PJ Fleck has beaten USC and UCLA in a span of about 7+ days, and he beat them in the last minute? I mean, row the boat on 110.
If you want.
And sent resumes to both schools.
Well, while I'm here, let me drop this off for you.
Hey, it was a sport that is so unpredictable. Like, we're going to watch the NFL today, and I like both products. But there's just the unexpected happens in college football. And I think watching yesterday, I'm going to go with violence right away. We've only been live for about 4 minutes. I'm going violence right away. If anybody is going to be transitive property guy in today's current college football landscape, I'm going to shove you off the Bob Carey Bridge. Okay. And I'm not going to worry about, are you going to hit the bottom of the Missouri River or the top? Because I think watching yesterday and kind of tying in Nebraska season, because if you're transitive property guy or gal, you are like you don't know what to do today. You crawled back in bed because you're like, Wisconsin and Rutgers and Purdue and it's week. The beauty of what this sport I think is becoming is the week-to-week aspect of you get ready for Saturday, you play your game on Saturday, and then you got to get ready for the next Saturday game. It's not like you're the finished product and you're going to roll through the season. And I think that's going to make the sport better. But yesterday just reiterated to me that is a week-to-week sport, and you never know what's going to happen, and embrace it and hope to God you're not on the wrong end of back-to-back bad week-to-week games. Because look at Alabama, South Carolina. Who saw that one coming?
That was incredible. That was an incredible finish.
Well, we can talk about Vanderbilt as well, where a couple weeks ago they're losing to Georgia State, and now they've reeled off back-to-back against Alabama and Kentucky. Like week to week, and you talk about teams are getting better.
Yeah, do you know they have 3 wins over Power 4 teams, and they've been at least a 12.5-point underdog in all 3 of those?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, welcome to college football. Embrace it. I mean, there's what? Maybe, I don't know, Bill Schmidt, Elijah, after yesterday in the incredible game in Eugene and what happened in Dallas, is there 1 elite team, 2 elite teams, 3 maybe? And are there, and if you say there are only like 2 or 3 elite teams, are there 2 or 3 elite coaches in college football that you never have to worry about decision making early in the game or late in the game?
I think that's debatable. Watching Ohio State lose a game that it should have won. Yeah. I mean, Oregon played out of its mind. The atmosphere was electric. It was similar to, Nebraska and Colorado earlier this season, that the whole environment, the whole show played out the way it was supposed to play out. If you're the, Oregon, they got game day there. That all went according to script, and maybe Dan Lanning coached his team up and did a great job. But I know all the pressure in the world is on Ryan Day to beat Michigan, but the way they handled that game in the second half, and especially down the stretch with clock management and Howard taking the slide with 2 seconds after the game's over, I think Ohio State fans are going to start turning up the heat on Ryan Day, and he may have the best team in the country. Texas fans are just wanting Steve Sarkisian to make a wrong move so they can get all upset and try to lure Nick Saban out of retirement. That's just because that's what Texas people do, right? They're always looking for the next bright, shiny thing, and they may already have it in their grasp. But I'm not sure that we're seeing with the elite programs, the ones that at the beginning of the season where you would say these are the 2, 3, 4 teams that should contend for the national championship. And other than the job that Sarkisian is doing at Texas, I'm not sure we're seeing elite level coaching performances in these big games. Well, they can steamroll the teams they're supposed to steamroll. And you're right, Gary, it's week by week. This is bowl season every week. It used to be back in the day, it was kick off the season and look ahead to who you play at Thanksgiving. Okay, now it's week by week. And so I think some of these really elite coaches are being challenged on a weekly basis that they're not quite there yet, where you say, who is the next Nick Saban? And I'm not sure who it is, other than Sarkisian right now.
You could argue, though, Dan Lanning had an elite coaching performance in the fourth quarter yesterday.
I agree with that.
He went and out-coached Ryan Day in the fourth quarter, particularly. Have you guys seen the breakdown of the 12 men on the field?
Yeah.
Oh,
a lot of people saying that's intentional.
I think it was intentional because they took that timeout with 10 seconds to go, and they snuck a 12th guy on the field.
And the rule, if you've missed this, is essentially the offense has the opportunity. Either you accept the penalty, move up 5 yards, and then the time that play ran runs off the clock, which it was 4 seconds. Yesterday, clock goes from 10 to 6, and it leaves Ohio State without enough time to run another play. Or, on the other end, you have 12 guys, so it's less likely that they're going to be able to have a big play that gets them into field goal range. So essentially, you're running that risk, giving up 5 yards and saying, we'll take 5 seconds off the clock in exchange for 5 yards, and it worked perfectly for Oregon last night.
Now, if Howard slides, 2 yards early, then Ohio State looks like a genius, and they got the big win that they needed and all that. But, I mean, why is Will Howard still running while the clock is at zeros? He can see the clock. He knows exactly what's going on in his head. And to me, that's a coach-player situation that he should have known. You cannot get beyond. And they got headset communication. And I get that it's frenetic. But it's got to be, if you get to the whatever yard line would have been, the 30 or the 35, when you see that white go down, but instead he kept running, and I was amazed that Ohio State let that get away.
Did they help me out here? I was watching it in a bar.
Of course you were.
Big upset there. Yeah. No upset Saturday.
Was there a timeout with Ohio State, or were they okay? So I thought so. I thought they had 6 seconds. They're on the other side of the 50. They need 10 to 12 yards for a comfortable field goal attempt.
And five to give yourself a better chance. 10 gives you a great chance. 5 gives you a better chance.
Howard scramble around, and I saw it end, and I'm like, that's disappointing. As great as this game was, it's a missed opportunity for Ohio State. Yeah, between having a timeout and time and situation with that experienced of a quarterback.
Well,
to have it
also
go down that way, that's awful.
Not knowing, and this goes to the sidelines, not knowing that penalty that was called in bounds, the clock. I mean, when the ref is ready to go, the clock starts. I mean, you have to know that. You have to be in full communication with, okay, the penalty was called. Okay, hey, coach, it's going to be, hey, is that going to be starting right away?
Right.
I mean, it's those kind of games where they're close games. It's just one or two things. And you look at Ohio State. I mean, I was surprised that their defense didn't get much of a pass rush. Now, a little bit of that was Oregon went with a lot of quick game, and Gabriel is a little bit unorthodox in the pocket. But man, he abused Ohio State's defensive backs. I mean, yeah. I don't know if Caleb Downs retired this morning or Denzel Burke or whoever, but man, Oregon picked apart the DBs for Ohio State, and I didn't see that coming. But what's going to happen, guys? And now what? Less than 7 weeks, we're going to clamor for an Ohio State-Oregon rematch. To see who gets the automatic bye into the top 4 of the playoff. But it was a great day for the Big Ten. Hey, across the board, whether it be in Champaign or 2 games in LA or in Eugene, that was a really, really good day for the Big Ten. I mean, the Big Ten needed that kind of day to kind of match where the SEC was getting a lot of love. Man, good day for the Big Ten. And it didn't look like old Big Ten football.
Can we spend a moment on that Penn State game? Because I think you laid it out, Gary. I said that last night. We're probably going to see Oregon, Ohio State later this year in December in Indy. But Penn State, I think, made an argument with that comeback win on the West Coast. Like, difficult to go across 2 time zones and go play a football game. USC, they're talented. I'm not sure they're built for the Big Ten, but they looked good yesterday. And then Penn State to show the mental fortitude to stay in that football game and go win it. I was really impressed by Penn State because I thought early in that one, it might be USC's day because we've talked about it. It's week to week, and I thought it may have been USC's day. Good for Penn State to put their hitting britches on and come out in the second half and go win that football game.
How about Tyler Warren?
Excuse me, the hitting britches?
Yeah, that's an adage from our buddy Tim Bob at the radio station. He uses that one high school football broadcast, and I had to steal it. So
I like that. I didn't know if it came from you're watching the Bear beatdown of the Jags right now in London, and you were just dropping britches on us.
No, the hitting britches has been uttered on many.
I think he was watching old game film of Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch, and
but Elijah brings something up. Like, I mean, once we get past this weekend, the tone for this upcoming week will be kind of interesting with Nebraska, Indiana, locally, nationally. But down the road in about a month, there's a lot of us are going to LA to see USC. USC now has 3 conference losses. So essentially their playoff hopes are over. They've been by 13 points. They've lost back-to-back games. I mean, do we know what USC is going to look like in a month? I mean, I'm pretty sure what Indiana's going to look like, Ohio State's going to look like. I am damn sure what UCLA is going to look like, that I have a chance to be more offensive oriented on a Friday night before a home game than UCLA will be on a Saturday. Then you have USC. Wisconsin, I think, is finding their stride. And then there is, of course, Iowa, which if you start now to look at Iowa's schedule, guys, I mean, I don't know. I said, don't be transitive property. And I don't think I'm being transitive property. I'm like, look at the landscape and week to week, how teams are being impacted. And I wonder about USC now upstairs of, well, there goes our playoff hopes. We've lost 3 games. And now they got to fly all the way across the country and play at Maryland on Saturday.
It's pretty brutal with this schedule.
To be fair, though, Maryland has looked not good.
No, they've looked.
Yeah, and their bowl streak might be in jeopardy if you knew that Maryland had a bowl streak.
Thanks for enlightening me, Sharpie. So what do you guys make of Iowa? They've got to go to Sparty next week, but that was impressive. Not only did they kind of withstand a back and forth early from Washington. Washington was pretty athletic and explosive early in that ball game, but Iowa just swallowed them up, out-hit them, out-physicaled, and Iowa and their run game was really, really impressive. Iowa could catch some fire here. They got to go to UCLA. They host Wisconsin, Maryland. Northwestern comes in. There's not anybody that Iowa can't beat remaining on their schedule.
And their 2 losses are to Iowa State in a rivalry game by 1, and Iowa State's unbeaten, and they got shellacked at Columbus. So
Well-
Iowa could have a pretty solid season by the time all is said and done, and position itself for, I suppose.
Does 10-2 get them in?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
Is they're going to be in that? They're going to be in that conversation, and whoever the football bracketologist is going to be first in, first out, and Iowa will probably be in that conversation because they're not going to play, I don't think, for the Big Ten title game or for the Big Ten title. But I could see where Iowa is going at the end of November, early December, going, why are we giving a free pass to the playoff for this group of 5 thing? Why are we giving the welfare invitation? We should be in. That's what Iowa's going to be doing when it comes time to putting the 12-team field together. We should have 14 teams in. That'll be Iowa in December.
That
Well,
sounds
to
like
be
a nice
fair-
little stump speech.
To be fair, let's look at Iowa's schedule. They're through the hardest part of their schedule,
Yeah.
and them winning out is not out of the question.
Yeah, they
If
could
you
be
look-
they could be 7-1 when Nebraska goes to Iowa City on Black Friday.
Because they're at Michigan State, who, I mean, Iowa should go and beat them. Northwestern, Wisconsin, at UCLA, at Maryland, and then you finish up with Nebraska. All those games, I know it's week to week, but all those games should be wins for Iowa. Could be interesting if you get to the end of the year and Iowa's backdoored their way into a playoff.
I will say this thing about Iowa, and McNamara was better yesterday, but they're still, their special teams were dominating. Their defense was really good. Look at week to week. What do we think about Michigan now? Washington, it's that whole thing. But I will say, in regards to Iowa, by the way, Trevor Lawrence is a nice overpaid backup quarterback. There we go. Just inserted that. Because he just threw another pick. If you're looking at Nebraska and what Nebraska needs moving forward, and you could look at any other roster in the Big Ten and you get the pick of one player, I'll tell you the guy who I'm taking is Caleb Johnson. Out of everybody in this league, I would take Caleb Johnson to put on Nebraska's roster right now. I mean, Genty from Boise State, who is on a pace to, run for 1 million yards, or maybe not 1 million. Doak Walker Award, Caleb Johnson is going to be right in the mix for that. I mean, what he does, and they're not great on the offensive line. Like, we got used to Iowa being dominant on the offensive line, but man, he's slippery. Yards after contact, which are a problem for Nebraska's running backs. He just gets yards. He'd be the number one guy I would take off anybody's roster and put on Nebraska's.
Question for you. As you look at Nebraska and kind of project their schedule, and we saw 2 monster matchups yesterday, Penn State, USC, and, of course, Oregon and Ohio State. Nebraska has trips to both Columbus and La La Land. From what you saw, do you think Nebraska's defense might be the best that SC and Ohio State may see this season?
Well, if it's the Nebraska defense that portrayed itself in the latest episode of Chasing 3 or 7, that defense, the 6 plays inside the 5 against Rutgers, and the workouts that Matt Rule and company talked about leading up to Rutgers, if that defense can hold on to that identity, then Nebraska may have certainly one of the top 3 defenses in the Big Ten, which would cause any team any amount of problems. And I would include that with Ohio State, based on the fact they gave up 31 points yesterday. Maybe Nebraska's defense, or they scored 32 the other day. But I think Nebraska's defense is good enough to keep it in every game that it's in. But they have to maintain that level of play that they had against Rutgers, and not the level of play that they tried to avoid against Illinois. So to that end, Nebraska's got a chance in every game that it plays. But now offense is another story.
Well, where does the offense go between now and some of those ball games? Big one this upcoming weekend. But I'm interested, Sharpie, if Nebraska will keep hitting twice a week, because the defense looked different in a great way because they were tackling a couple of times during practice.
So sticking with this defensive conversation on something that Bill just said, Oregon's not bad defensively. Ohio State's got some dudes, and they still put up over 30. Nebraska, I mean, What if Nebraska plays really good defense and a couple of explosive plays, end up in Ohio State scores 28? My thing moving forward will be, can Nebraska score points? If all of a sudden you got to chase some points, remember, Indiana is one of now 2 teams that have never trailed in a game this year. What if you're chasing points? Are you going to be able to put up enough points to do it? We talk about Iowa and we laugh at their offense. They're actually averaging 29 points a game. And I think the ceiling for Nebraska right now is 28. Along with the defense, because you can't keep relying on the defense to put up 10, 7 or less. I still think the defense will be stout, and especially on the ground, even against a team like Ohio State that had Judkins and Henderson at running back, is what does this offense do to get those points moving forward? Do they open up the passing game or do they open up the running game from here on out? Because remember, they're 14th in the Big Ten in yards per carry, and they still have, I think, areas to explore with personnel and packages and what they're running on offense through the air. So where does Nebraska in the second half score, guys? Are they more likely to do it because of a revamped running game or an expanded passing game?
I like Nebraska to start to utilize the short pass game as a substitute for the run game. We saw with that pass play to Ramir Johnson against Rutgers, right? A little 7-yard pass, screen pass. It goes for 36. I could see more of those kinds of plays to utilize the backs. And that's Ramir Johnson. Emmett Johnson can probably catch a few passes here and there. But I think Nebraska uses the short pass game as the substitute for the handoff game, right? And then you get inside the 5 and they let Dowdell, look, Dante, you want to run forward at people, we'll do that for you. Inside the 5, all you want. But until we get inside the 5, long handoff, short passes to the backs is probably going to be the order of the day. And that's how they utilize the run game.
I'm with that. I think that's comfortable. I think you have some backs that'll catch it, and I'm anxious to see more tight end usage. Get Fedoni, get Borkature involved more so, and in the flat, maybe move the pocket a little bit. If you're Nebraska, get Dylan on some rollouts, and just take 3, 4, 5 yards per play. But be it on first down or second down, don't eliminate going deep to your big guys, but don't force anything either. I think Nebraska could really find a groove, moving the chains, moving the sticks, with some high percentage throws for Dylan. You'll need it next Saturday.
But they're going to go with the inside handoff to Janiron Bonner inside the 10. It's either going to be an inside handoff and he's going to sweep it to the right, or they're going to do the shovel pass to Bonner. They're going to do that every game. So there's essentially a running play with Bonner. Barney has become maybe the most valuable tool on the offensive side with jet sweeps and little inside pitches, and then maybe he goes downfield. And then you've got, like I mentioned, the Ramir Johnson type pass plays where they're just long handoffs, and there's your Nebraska run game.
I do worry though, as you get into November. We saw how the weather impacted that game last Saturday. How Nebraska's offense gets impacted by cold and crappy weather in the Big Ten as you move into November. Like under the lights on Black Friday at Kinnick, I mentioned this before on another show, Hail Varsity, is you're going to have crappy weather. You can bank on the fact that game is going to be cold and hellish. A night game in November, the day after Thanksgiving, is going to be brutal. How is Nebraska's offense going to be affected as you get into that Big Ten weather? Matt Rule's talked about it plenty, how important it is to have a rushing attack that you can rely upon once the calendar turns to November and once the weather turns to hell. We saw how it impacted Nebraska last week. That's just my question is are you able to get the packages and the creativity, which is a bit of a buzzword, but I've been using it a lot, like the creativity in your rushing attack to stress the defense in a way that is other than physical? Okay, just you got 5 guys wearing on you. How can you stress that defense in a way that it's personnel or eye candy in the backfield? What are you going to do that can stress that defense and make them think about things other than just 5 big dudes up front trying to knock you back 3 yards?
So the weather in Bloomington next Saturday, sunny, 73, winds out of the south 5 to 10 miles an hour. So ideal conditions shouldn't play into it. I think the middle of the field will be a key part. Nebraska still has, we're still wondering about Dillon's consistency on the deep ball. But I think if this offensive line, when they keep Dillon clean, his completion percentage is through the roof. And even when he's pressured a little bit, it's not like everything is just falling apart. He's still about a 50% completion percentage. But if they run a little bit more in the middle of the field and get guys on crossers, if that's the way to go instead of relying on that deep ball. But that comes back to Dillon. I think Dillon wants to take the big shot when some of that underneath stuff is there. I kind of equate it to last night. If you looked at Shadur at the end of the game, not saying that there was an underneath route that was open when they had 4th and 6, they had to get to the 35. Instead, he went for a 40-yard fade, hoping for the DPI.
Yes.
We've kind of seen that. So if that's something that's refined in the bye week of this offense is from 7 to 15 yards downfield, where Nebraska's been pretty good, they just dominate. And then that goes to what Elijah said. That's kind of where a tight end can do a little bit more work in the middle of the field.
Be all right. Well, gear up, fellas. It is Indiana week. Nebraska, a chance to end that dreaded versus ranked streak that they're on and keep on keeping on in this exciting, fun, topsy-turvy Big Ten.
Nebraska might be ranked by default, there might be some teams that slip out, and Nebraska's another ORV away from being in the top 25.
Elijah?
I was going to say, Bill, you make a great point. I look at Utah especially. I think they're a team that's probably going to drop out of the top 25 here, open up a space for Nebraska. But I wanted to ask the question, and this was on my mind before we started this show. After yesterday, are we a little more convinced that the Big Ten is the best conference in college football? That's been a discussion point. The Big Ten's got some teams. You have Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, 3 teams that I think should be probably playing in a college football playoff at the end of the year if things go their way. As for the SEC, you're seeing Vanderbilt come up and invite some teams. I'm not sure Georgia's that good.
Well, they do have the number 1 team in the country.
Relatively speaking.
I'm not sure Bama's all that good. Relatively,
Bama's shaky.
I think Texas is good.
I agree with that.
Real. Yeah. No, I'll say this. Bama's a little shaky this year, but there's still no one you want to meet in a dark alley. They found a way yesterday.
Very undisciplined, though.
Yeah, no.
And they play defense like they're in the Big 12.
Uh-huh.
They're to me, they're a team that is probably going to be in the college football playoff at the end of the year. But based on what I've seen, I'm not calling them a contender for a national championship as of right now.
Yeah. Hey, can I one more thing, which has become the famous phrase of this? What do you guys think the tone will be around here on all of our shows and conversations this week surrounding the Nebraska-Indiana game?
I think hope. I think from a listener standpoint and a feedback, I think there's some renewed excitement. I think you're going to have anxiousness in a good way. And I think there's going to be a lot of the fan base that thinks this can be all right. It's not going to be a doom and gloom. I think they'll see it as more of an opportunity for the team to go play better football. It's been a while. You get a chance to reset, and you hope the offense is fixed and a little bit fresh.
I think a couple things. One, I think topic of conversation will be, is Schmidt going to a Nebraska road game? And if so,
No.
Where will the Nebraska State Patrol be deployed to prevent that from happening? Because Matt Rule is well aware of Schmidt's Husker football road record. Secondly, I think it's all about Indiana. I think this is, I mentioned this before, I think this is like the Nebraska-Illinois game where all the attention was on Nebraska. It was in Lincoln. It was the sellout streak. Nebraska's potentially 7-0 going to Ohio State, the darlings of the top 25 conversation. Meanwhile, Brett Bielema has his team, blue-collar practicing while under the radar. Nobody's talking about him, and they come to town, and a couple of plays go their way, a couple of non-calls go their way, and they steal a win. I think with Big Noon going to Bloomington, it's their first sellout in who knows how long, and they're going to be talking about them on all the pregame shows, how high-powered their offense is. They're 6-0 for the first time in forever. that Nebraska has an opportunity to put together a blue collar week like it did against Rutgers in preparation. And it's by far the toughest team Indiana's faced this season. And they may be a little overwhelmed by the moment, and Nebraska might go and steal a win. I think it's all on Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree. I think it's Nebraska's been in the situation that Indiana has been, where they're getting a lot of love. They're a favorite, a slight favorite. It's up to 4.5, which essentially is still a push. They're ranked, and everybody's going to be talking about them. They've gotten off to a great start. We've kind of seen that around here before. So that's why with a Tony White defense, and he's got 2 weeks to prepare. They go on the road. They get away from Memorial Stadium. They can go play free and loose. There's going to be all kinds of attention all week in Bloomington, and good. It's good for the Big Ten that Indiana's off to a 6-0 start, and there's kind of a team that hasn't been talked about much is getting some love. I think it's a great situation for Nebraska to go and play that game, and plus it's at 11 in the morning. So boom, you get in, you get the game going, but it's part of, is Nebraska relevant? You watch, they win a football game like that, they're going to be ranked, and we might even go, now the path to 9 is realistic.
Oh, it's set up for them. It's a mulligan opportunity, so to speak, and kind of change that conversation about what you've been versus what you are with the Nebraska squad. It's Gary Sharp. It's Bill Doleman. It's Elijah Herbel. It's Chris Schmidt. The Sunday Live Average Joe's Sports Show winding down. We'll be back at you midweek to get you geared up for Nebraska, Indiana, and back here in 1 week for Nebraska and Indiana recap. And make sure you like and subscribe the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. I appreciate you doing that. Spotify and iTunes. And we'll holler at you here midweek for Nebraska, Indiana with the Average Joes.